Welcome to the last ELOC of this season and this year. We will continue next year for sure, but this time it's time to celebrate Erno's career and unbelievable accomplishments with a Professor Mari Murtonen. And I have an honor to introduce her. So the schedule is the same as usual. So first I will introduce Mari, and then Mari will present her talk, and then we will see how it will be, whether we have a little informal discussion section in the end. And then we come back. So this is it. And we have had many talks during this year, and this is Mari's day today. So Mari will talk about supporting university students' scientific thinking skills, and now I will tell you some details about Mari. So I have known Mari since I think more than 20 years now. For a very long time, and these are the Scopus statistics that she has. So she's been providing lots of scientific articles and having many co-authors, but I think, well, she's supporting the idea of staying home during these times, which I support as well, which is nice. And then in words, so Mari gave me a permission to use her own photos from her Facebook, and this is Mari in words, how I see her. So she's a very enduring colleague, and she used to work in the Tampere University as a full professor before she came back to our faculty and our teacher department. Department of Teacher Education, which I'm really happy about. I was thinking about like using here empathic or enduring, because she's been understanding the turbulences of academic careers very well, and we have been sharing these moments together for many times. And when I think of Mari, of course, laughing is something that comes into mind. She's good at that, and she makes people around her very often laugh. And she's extremely good at celebration, I think. Her specific gifts, and even more skilled she's in handcraft. So the costume she is wearing in this photo is made by herself, and we have seen and tasted excellent bakery products like cakes and all kinds of things you can eat. So she's amazingly talented and gifted craftsman, I would say, artistic. So now I would actually give you the floor, so-called Mari. I'm very happy that you are giving us this talk and having this discussion. You are one of the Erno's former PhD students and a very good member of our professor group of us. So welcome, Mari, and I wish you happy times with your talk.
Thank you, Minna. Thank you so much for inviting me to this seminar. It's an honor to be here and talk to Erno, and welcome also on behalf of me to this meeting. And once more, congratulations to Erno for the birthday, of course, but also for the excellent superior career you have had. And as we have heard before by Sanna Järvelä and Päivi Häkkinen in their talks, I think I have the same message for Erno, that thank you for all you have made. You have been such an excellent support all the time, as my supervisor and in many mentoring roles and everything. So it has been a great path to go with you, and our working together has been very pleasant. And so I'm very, very thankful for that. So my topic today is supporting the development of university students' scientific thinking skills. And for our talk, we could discuss about some possibilities and problems. This theme has been with me for the whole time at the university, and a second branch of my studies has been now, due to my job as a university pedagogical teacher, has been the development of university teachers, but that is also intertwined in these themes. So let's go on. But in the beginning, I would like to tell a little bit about how we came up or how we ended up in this situation, being here, and how Erno became my supervisor. It happened somewhere in the middle of 90s when I was studying in Turku, and I was considering what I should do in my master thesis. And at the time I was interested in cognitive sciences, and in Helsinki there was some courses on that, and I actually applied there, and I was thinking of moving to Helsinki to study and move my papers to Helsinki so that I would do my master's thesis there, because I met there Kirsti Lonka and Sari Limpu-Mylänen, who were involved in university pedagogy that I was already then interested in. But then I once noticed a message from the message board of the Faculty of Education in Turku saying that Erno Lehtinen is coming back, and I was like, who is Erno Lehtinen? And decided to go to see Erno in this information session where they were talking about the possibilities to do master thesis with them. And I remember Erno saying that I'm not sure if I'm going to take a group, and don't apply to me and everything. And I knew immediately that this is going to be my supervisor, and that was a very good choice, because Erno has been such a great supervisor for all these years. So one very nice happening or thing that happened when I was starting my master's thesis, and at the same time I applied to Erasmus Exchange in UK, and I went to Erno and said that, what do you think that I'm going to UK now, and is this going to be a problem? And what Erno said was, I think, very typical and very, very nice. And I think we all can recognize this, was that, oh no, that's not a problem. You know, we have these days this email. I can supervise you through email. It was 1996. Okay, there was email. I'm not sure if I saw a computer for the whole time I was in Leeds, but anyway, I got the master's thesis done in time and everything went well. So, but I think this was very, very kind of trusting for the future and trusting for everything, that everything will settle down and will go well. And it was so, I was always remembering that, no, it's not a problem. And that's usually Erno's answer to anything. That's not a problem. And I have noticed that nothing is a problem because Erno always solves all the problems. So that's why I have here also in the end of this presentation some questions to Erno. Then after I had done my master thesis, I was considering that I liked it very much, and I felt that I liked doing research, and I was interested in continuing. And I asked Erno that can I possibly do or apply as a doctoral student for him? And he said, yes, of course. And then I asked that, is there any project that I could apply to? And he gave me two options. The other one was the scientific thinking that I had already studied in my master thesis, and the other one was little children's mathematics learning. So we can here see now here that these both branches have been growing on very well. And I remember Minna was starting at the kind of the same time as me in this other project. So it has been a very nice journey to go along with these themes all the time. So then I started my dissertation, and one other thing that I want to remember here is that what was very not very typical to do, and very strong experience for me was that when I came back to Turku, and I knew that these Helsinki people you can see here were going to early conference in Athens, and I said to Erno that, oh, that must be very nice, and see all these big names and everything, and Erno somehow arranged me the ticket to early conference, and I managed to go there, and it was very nice experience. And I remember when we with Anna-Mari we were hiding behind some doors and peeking to the classrooms and saying, oh, that's Stella Bosniadu, and that's this and this. And it was very fun and very good experience. And then I also remember that at the Faculty of Education there were some people talking that, okay, Erno is sending Mari to a conference, and Mari even doesn't have a paper. It was not so typical on these days to go to conferences, but I think Erno was a kind of groundbreaking showing the way to go, because in few years everybody were going to the conferences. So Erno has always been the leader or showing the way where to go. And I think one of the main things, or maybe the most important thing that I have learned from Erno, is that what research community really means, that it's not our own group at our university or something else, but it's a whole world, and all the researchers who come to the same question and try to solve it with papers and discussions and everything. So it has been very kind of aligned, Erno's actions, like everything supports each other in the education of us, his students. Then we finally made it to the dissertation in 2005, and that was very happy and nice situation. And but after that, Erno was not released from his tasks, but I was again going to him and saying that I need help, and could you be my mentor? And I asking all kind of questions, and Erno has been always very helpful, and I think, or I'm thanking Erno to be my mentor and teacher and everything good in every sense all the time after this. And I have learned so many important things. So learning of research skills and scientific thinking, what is it all about, and why is this important? I think this is important and of course because I'm now the professor of higher education pedagogy, is that how we can prepare our graduates for the future tasks they are doing in their working life, whether it's university or any company or anything in our society. And the more I discuss with our teachers from all faculties, the more convinced I am that the most important task for us is to teach our students something that can be called as scientific thinking or research skills or critical thinking or something like that, because that is the way they can manage their solve very complex problems in their future working life and go on. So to get our students to seem so happy and bright as in these pictures, what should we do? Well, that's not, or unfortunately, that's not the situation. Many students are not very comfortable with these research studies or research courses, and sometimes people say that, well, it's not a problem because they are undergraduates or master students, that we only have to worry about this if they are going to be researchers. But I would say that also bachelors and masters need these skills because they are the big mass that go to the working life, and they have to deal with the very difficult problems of our days, and they have to be ready for the evidence-based problem solving, to utilize research and understand how research is made. So in my doctoral dissertation, I went to study this theme, and the main results from my dissertation are here, and they were that well, I was studying social science and education and psychology students, and similar problems were found. They reported that they had difficulties and they were not motivated to study research, especially quantitative methods were something they experienced hard to learn. And one of my best cited publications is the one where I report that, or we report that the students said that they think that they don't need research skills in their becoming working life. So they really think, and this was connected also to their willingness to study these methods. And they also seem to have problems in understanding very basic research concepts. And now when I got evidence in my dissertation that there really is the problem, or of course I knew there is a problem because there is not very much, but there are some publications worldwide about the same topic, that students have problems in these courses. Then I wanted to look a little bit closer at this a problem of research concepts understanding, and after my dissertation I did one study where I asked the students to draw mind maps and use certain terms, certain concepts, and the concepts were, for example, qualitative, quantitative, empirical, and theoretical. And what I noticed was that how it should have went was that both qualitative and quantitative are empirical, and they are both connected to the theoretical, but that was not the concept. All the concept maps were not like that. Many had ideas that only qualitative was theoretical. For example, there were some explanations because it creates theory. Some thought that quantitative is only theoretical because it tests theory. Some students thought that qualitative was empirical and quantitative theoretical because in qualitative methods you go among the people, you like interview them or interact with them, and that is empirical. And quantitative is theoretical because it's made in the office. So they experienced many kinds of misunderstandings, and the problem is that these were like master students, they were not bachelor's, beginning students. So when we are teaching research, we expect that, for example, concepts of qualitative, quantitative, empirical, and theory are understood by the students, but this is not the case. Many have problems with understanding these concepts. Now, after this study, I was very happy when I met in my own master thesis class Heidi Salmento, who is also, I think, participating today. And Heidi has been now starting her dissertation about the same topic, and so continuing this branch of research. And I have collaborated with Margaret Kiley from Australia for many years, and we have been doing some preliminary study about the concept of theory. And now Heidi has collected data on this topic, and we are about to publish the paper, or it has been accepted, I think, in the journal, about how students understand theory. Because we know that many students say that this is too theoretical. I need something practical. So they don't understand the connection between these. They don't really understand what theory means. And Heidi has been doing many classifications about this. And now the best one, I think, what describes this situation is this one with 4 categories. So there are kind of everyday conceptions which can be very misconceptions or not scientific conceptions at all. Then there are students who can use some right terms about what theory means, but they don't show any deeper understanding. Then there is this procedural approach, which means that the students can describe somehow what is done with theory, what it is for. And then the highest level is the epistemic understanding, where the student clearly sees that the knowledge is produced by the people and how research is interacting with this whole thing, and how theory helps us to go forward with our understanding of the world. So this is the newest one about this conceptions theme. Then all these considerations and research that we have done have led us to think that maybe there should be some concept or something what we could use to explain this whole phenomena. Something more than just the research skills. Critical thinking is a very widely researched area, and it's very important, but it's also a theory that is not capable to explain everything that the students need in their becoming working life and when they are about to solve complex problems. New studies on university students have showed that epistemic development has been very, very important in students' development at the university or during the university studies. So we would need something more generic, something that would describe the skills that the students need to learn during their university studies. And that led us to propose the term scientific thinking. But there are certain problems with this. The biggest one is the word science. And I have been trying to discuss this with many people from many countries, and they all see the problem, but basically there's not so much we can do with this, because the English word science refers so heavily to the natural sciences. Although I made some Google searches, and I found institutions and journals and everything when we were making a book with, I will show the book later, but for the book article, and science is used in many combinations, like educational sciences, social sciences. We have journals like educational sciences and so on, human sciences, but still the word science itself refers only to natural sciences. The situation is very different in for example, German Wissenschaft has the same idea as, for example, the Swedish Vetenskap and Finnish Tiede. They all have the idea of something generic for all the domains of university faculties, but unfortunately the English word does not have it. We have a long tradition in Finland that many university students have read during their studies the famous book by Ilkka Niinilo, the famous philosopher, Finnish philosopher, and Leila Haaparanta, named The Development of Scientific Thinking, and that is also behind my thinking. They explain it very well there, and somehow I think that this was the starting point for the broader view that could be done when studying university students' thinking. The basic scientific thinking task that has been used, for example, Diana Kuhn has been very active in researching children's thinking and especially scientific thinking, but it's mainly done with physical tests like this. That can the student say that how much the length of the wire and the weight and everything has an effect when it's going forward and backwards. Here it is in motion. So this is basic conception of scientific thinking when we look at the literature, how it's been studied. I once showed this to my pedagogical class students, and there were students from or teachers from all faculties of the university, and one lecturer of physics said that, okay, why do you say that this is a task of scientific thinking? This is a physical problem, not a scientific thinking problem. And I'm so much agreeing with him that it's a very narrow problem, and of course it tells something, but it's as many of you are mathematics researchers, you know that mathematics is a very important basic skill, and it gives tools for many kinds of thinking, but it's not all, for example, in scientific thinking that has to be like managed. So this was the starting point, and then we thought that how could we invent this broader theory, and we took this kind of an approach that we will ask our teachers and students how they understand this. And here is also the book that I was a doctoral disputant for Kerm Balu somewhere in 2015 or 16. And he had made very similar research to mine and is very interested in this topic, and also shares this idea of scientific thinking. When I was explaining this to him, he was right that, okay, yes, I understand what you mean, and this is just what we should do. So we edited a book named Redefining Scientific Thinking for Higher Education, and try here to describe what we mean with higher education scientific thinking. And one of the articles is mine and Heidi's about the teachers, and the other one is about students and their conceptions made by Heidi and me. So the first one with the teachers is it was an open-ended question, and the participants were asked to describe how they understand scientific thinking, and this was done in Finland, so they have the Finnish conception of scientific thinking. And on the basis, we did a classification of the qualitative analysis of the results and their writings. There were 87 writings from various disciplines, and now I will show this 5-point theory in more detail in the next slides. So we ended up to do this kind of a figure which appears to be a flower for many. So let's talk about the flower of scientific thinking. It flowers, it's not maybe a good connotation always, but anyway. So we classified the answers, and we found evidence. So this was a theoretical, based on theories. That's why we have these very familiar terms here. First one was criticality and the basics of science, and that was like the people were referring to, for example, ethics and objectivity and reliability and such things about science. That scientific thinking is that you understand the basics, what scientific thinking or science should be about. The next one was epistemic understanding, that the teachers were talking about the fact that the students should understand how the knowledge is built and done in science, and how everything is on clear and unsafe unless you have to believe to it yourself due to your education and all, and it can change any minute maybe, and in some sciences it's sometimes very relativistic also. Then actually many teachers refer to research skills, that you have to understand how the research is done. It's not enough that you understand that that the research results or that our information is done with the science, but also you have to understand the methods, how it's done, how knowledge is produced. And also many refer to evidence-based reasoning, so that you have to use reasoning skills. You cannot only go by the kind of the first fact you see or hear or anything, but you have to be logical and make scientific inferences. And one more thing that was actually very apparent in many writings was the ability to situate the information to some context. So understand that it's for example, generic, or that it is special to your own discipline or something else. So to understand what is the context of the information and where it has been produced. So this was the theory that was built on the basis of the teachers' responses. Here are some differences between, or similarities between, the faculties. Maybe if we want to say something about this, was that this epistemic understanding is not very high in all faculties. What I think that is due to the fact that this is not, the scientific thinking is kind of a generic skills, and there has been lots of discussions lately or during the last 10 or 15 years that generic skills are very important in university, but they are not always explicated very well. So we should tell more about them and explain students that this is a skill and you have to learn this kind of a skill. And it's not a very, it's not coming on one course, or it's not a very detailed skill, but it's all over the courses, and you have to learn some core about that. Contextual understanding, of course, in humanities, you can understand that it's very important because there it is an important fact. Then if we think about causality and such things, the education was lower, but these are so little ends that we cannot infer very well about this. Research-based thinking actually was very high in many faculties. And science and engineering was highest in this evidence-based reasoning skills, because it may be that on these areas it's more evident than in other areas. But this is something that would be very interesting to also study in future in more detail. When we look at the students, we had 145 students, and actually we were able to classify them in the same categories. I don't have here the statistics, but it was very similar to the teachers' results. And what we noticed there, and actually we did some statistical analysis also about it, was that those who were emphasizing research skills, those were the students who also understood the epistemic understanding, the importance of epistemic understanding. So it seems that research skills maybe foster the understanding that knowledge is built by people. So now we were talking about students' problems in understanding research, and how students and teachers both understand what is scientific thinking. And now the next question is that how teachers could support their students in the development of these skills. And Heidi has been doing research on this. We actually, and Heidi was developing many questionnaires where we try to somehow study the scientific thinking with teachers, but we didn't. It's same as epistemic understanding, that it's very hard to develop a questionnaire on that topic. So we have now decided that we try some other methods, because that seems not to be working very reliably. But the topic is very important. I think that is a very, very hard and central topic for the universities in the future, how to avoid these alternative facts and support the development of people's understanding of our knowledge, how reliability it is, and so on. So, and as I said before, this is a kind of a generic skill that is maybe that's the reason why it's not learned well, because it is supposed to be learned, but it's not learned because it has been not explained well enough. So the last slides of my presentation are these. I had possibilities and problems. I have here first the possibilities. Maybe, as I said, this is becoming even more important topic in the future. Maybe that will allow us more research funding. We don't know. I will hope so. And the other fact that is at least happening is that pedagogical trainings are becoming even more typical. And so many teachers have the possibility to come to the courses and get understanding of this phenomena of scientific thinking and development. Maybe also these new solutions we have in teaching will allow us to have more time in deeper conversations with the students. I skipped the problems, sorry. So I think the main problems are that teachers, yes, the problems were actually first and then the possibilities, but the teachers do not understand what are the problems behind students' ideas. So maybe they need more education on that topic. And of course, the curriculums are in central role here. So we should somehow try to create our curricula such that they will support the kind of seeing the whole picture, understanding the whole meaning of scientific thinking development. And of course, our educational programs are even more fragmented as before, and maybe there is no enough time for this kind of conceptual development, which is very bad, but I don't know, maybe that's something we can discuss together. So, still, I think fundamental questions still remain that what is this whole phenomena of scientific thinking and research learning, and how we could support as teachers, how we could support the development of these skills. And Erno, please, as I said, you always have an answer to all my questions. I believe you have it now too.
So, thank you very much, Mari. But first I answer your last question, so that quite a long time when you started this, because it really has been a long journey for you. I was also very much interested in these questions, and I was worrying that university studies do not support very well the development of scientific thinking. But then I outsourced this problem to you, and you have been working on that, so that I cannot give good answers to
okay.
Okay, but Yes, as I already mentioned, this is something which Mari has been working quite a long time, and in the very early papers we were thinking the problems together. And I remember one very interesting finding. So I think the data was already from 90s, or where we did find this kind of patterns of thinking, so that university students made first of all, they made very strict division between quantitative and qualitative study, the research, and then they combined the qualitative methods with human thinking, very positive values, soft ideas, and then quantitative studies with hard values, non-human attitudes, and so on. And they were not so much based on any research questions they were studying, but they were as an ideological ways of thinking. Do you think that this still exists among university students, this kind of division?
I don't know how much, for example, we should actually study this, how much in the Department of Teacher Education, the new researcher workshop has had an effect on this thinking, but because I also did the study in USA, I think it's not about the Finnish teachers or anything. It's more common problem, and for some reason, it's also about how these methods and the developers of methods talk about themselves, that quantitative is, as you said, hard and strict, and qualitative is more soft, and so on. So people will kind of identify themselves to some of the, they will kind of take their side, select which camp they belong to, and that is very bad. And I think the practical side of the curriculums is many times that quantitative and qualitative courses are separate, and that's very bad for the students because they may think that you have to select one, and usually for the master's thesis you do select one, but it should be presented more in a mixed methods way, that most of the educational research is anyway mixed methods. As many as we know, when we are supervising master students and their thesis, they try to put their studies to some locker, and they are like, oh no, this is not, is this qualitative because I have numbers here or something like that. And this is like, it comes from somewhere, and I think it comes from the curriculum, because it's easier to have qualitative and quantitative courses. Although we have this researcher workshop that specifically tries to avoid this division.
Yes, and I believe that one reason for this problem was also the way how the, let's say, the first widely used method books of qualitative studies were written, because this was a kind of, they started with the criticism that now the traditional way to do research cannot catch the real meanings of things, and then they presented their claims in a very, let's say, I would say, in an ideological way. So it's not only the students had the problem, but also the people who started to the researchers who started to develop and propagate also the qualitative methods, that they should be also accepted as real scientific methods. And they did it in a way which was not very scientifical. It was very ideological. And then that was probably one reason. I have noticed that that's not anymore so much the problem in more recent recent methods books, but that used to be. But at least for 2 decades, it has caused a huge problem for students, because then still a few years ago, I have met students who have been thinking the theme for their master thesis or for their PhD thesis, and they, without any research questions, they first were thinking, should I do a qualitative study or quantitative study, independently of the research question, which sounds kind of very strange for me. But hopefully it's not so bad anymore. That's developing. But then the question of I think that the way how research methods are taught in universities have not changed very much during the last decades. In most of the faculties, they still have the separate method courses, and I have seen that and in my discussions with university teachers from different countries, it's quite typical that then when students then really need the research skills, they do not remember anything anymore about the courses they have been done a couple of years ago. And in general, everything what they have learned in the methods courses are kind of not connected to anything, so that they have not been able to create this what you very nicely described, the more general scientific thinking. But now the question for you is that how to solve that problem, how to organize research methods teaching so that it does not only teach some individual methods or some individual principles, but this kind of well-connected body of knowledge, which we can call scientific thinking. How to do that?
Okay. Well, when I have been working with teachers from the different faculties, let's say that in natural sciences, the problems are a bit different. They do not well, as we saw in this figure, bar figure, the research-based or evidence-based thinking is maybe, or problem solving is maybe more natural for them, or it is more like already built in their thinking. But we have this problem in many sciences, such as education, psychology, social sciences, economic sciences, also in law and some human sciences. The teachers report that they have found that, for example, the students do not understand what theory means and how it's related to the actions they make, what they call research. And I think because theory is somehow used in everyday conceptions, in people's everyday life in certain way, and it sometimes is used as a synonym for difficult. We need to discuss with the students and really try to go to understand what they, how to understand these very basic concepts. Erno, you said you remember this one study we made about students' attitudes towards different methods, but I remember one study that we didn't publish because we didn't know it would be a great study. It happened one day, just by the accident. It was in time when you had built this very first technology laboratory or auditorium, what was it called, in Sanitas, in the basement. And you had created this ALEL program for statistics learning. And I was having small groups teaching in statistics or research methods, quantitative research methods. And there was a mistake in the timetable, so that I had like 4 groups, and one group had 2 hours more than the other groups. And I used the whole 2 hours with the one group for creating the hypothesis. So in ALEL, in your program, it was there was some real studies inside, and then the students should copy the design and do the research again with the real data. And the first step was to create the hypothesis, and usually it was done in like 15 minutes. But for this first group, we used the whole 2 hours to create the hypothesis. And in the end of the course, the other 3 groups were going just okay, but not very well. But the first group, who had 2 extra hours and they did this hypothesis for the whole time, they had very good results, and they really understood what they were doing. So I think this was a key to the fact that if you don't understand the basics, the real meaning, what you are doing and why, you cannot understand the actions, the statistical actions you are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, as you said, separate research courses are not the best way to do it. And we have also been doing research on our Department of Teacher Education with the students who have participated in this research workshop. And I think that those results have been very promising, because they have, for example, they don't feel so much a panic anymore about statistics, and they are like feeling comfortable with results has become more everyday to them, and they can relate it better to their other contents. So I think those kinds of solutions are good. But I think how research should be taught is to try to get students to understand how the knowledge is built and what are the basics, not only to produce. Our courses are many times built so that we have to produce something. We have to produce statistical analysis or something else. That is not the main core for bachelor and master students. The main thing would be understand, for example, read articles and understand how they are done and what is reliable. But if we think at the level of the curriculum, I would say that that it's more difficult, of course, but it should somehow be also articulated in there that research is kind of the generic theme that goes through all the courses.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what I also think, that if we can combine methodologic teaching with other this kind of content-related teaching, that whatever content we teach, it would be very important to go beyond the concepts, the science concept, how these have been developed, which kind of step of development there have been, what kind of methods has been used to develop concepts, because it easily happens that students like the findings of the results, but they do not understand good enough how these kind of scientific concepts and what they what they have in their own discipline have been developed. And this integration should be to both ways, so that when we teach methods, that should not be independent from the contents, what we study. And when we teach the scientific concepts, we should go beyond and look at the processes, how they have been developed. But coming back to this example of the ALEL program and that particular group which spent more time thinking about the hypothesis, I think that this is that's pity that we don't never have analyzed that carefully and published the results. But I think this is related to one general problem in not only university teaching but also school teaching, that we tend to go very quickly to procedural knowledge, so that we try to automatize the procedures without giving enough time to support first to create clear questions, what we are doing, why we are doing that, and then support for the theoretical understanding. And that's clearly is a problem in methods courses, so that it's when I look how they typically are organized, or how the methods books are created, this one part is very kind of formal, so that just quick presentation of some definitions and maybe some very formal formulas, and then the procedural part, how to carry out that. But then the support for deeper thinking is not typically very well developed, and that's in both in written materials and in organized courses. And we should pay much more attention to that to help.
I think we need more research.
I understand.
This is actually an area that has been not researched very much yet. And if we look at any conceptions in any domain in science or in universities, we can notice that there are things that people don't understand well. For example, we have actually today, our new publication came out with chemistry teachers showing that those students who still use some kind of mental rules or heuristic models at the university chemistry courses, for example, ball and stick models that are very typical in high school, those students are not capable to understand deeply, for example, the Lewis model, which is one chemistry model, because they can not get rid of the original model. Mm-hmm. Ilona Södervik has been doing with me and the chemistry teachers this study, and also in biology we noticed with Ilona was also there, and Kristina Nokkala from biology department, we did a study about meiosis as a concept, and we noticed that those students it's typical that students can write answers that seem to be right, but when they have to draw meiosis as a process, they cannot do that. So it's a question of how you can find out what is the part that, as we all know, because we are learning scientists, what is the part what the students don't understand. And for example, in research learning, if the students do not understand what means empirical, it's not possible to get very far with them. Mm-hmm. Sure. So be very aware of their conceptions in the beginning, and theory, what means theory. If they think that theory is synonym to hard or difficult, there's no point to discuss with them about theory.
Mm-hmm. Or then this everyday use of the term theory, something too theoretical, or this is theory, so that means that this has nothing to do with the real thing. Kind of, which easily leads to misconceptions. Yes, that is. But one important kind of aspects of the scientific thinking, why it is important for everybody in university studies, not only for those who will continue as professional researchers, but people going to different academic professions is the idea of evidence-based work. And when we did the article to that particular book you did, so you edited Little Balloon, it's I tried to find earlier studies or writings about the role of deep scientific thinking in evidence-based practice, and there's very little about that. Even but when I theoretically think that is a fundamental kind of requirement that people, different professions, if they want to really, in a high level or in a high quality level, use the evidence-based practice, they cannot do that without the deep scientific thinking. They be aware how these findings have been created in order to be able to make use of that in their practice. And that really was surprising that there was so little about that. Have you seen more recently?
No. No, I haven't. Although I haven't been doing any systematic searches, but nothing has now came up.
But when you have been discussing with university teachers from different fields, from medicine, natural sciences, and so on, because in many fields the evidence-based practice is a whole topic. Do they connect it to the scientific thinking at all? Or do they see that as a separate kind of?
I think the problem here is the word science and the scientific thinking research, because there is lots of research on scientific thinking, and it means only natural sciences, although medicine and those are natural sciences, but it's not typical to study university students' ideas or thinking through the theory of scientific thinking, because that is very different. The original idea is very different. And I think that this research is very fragmented or done with different concepts under different terms, just because of this problem that we don't have one generic theory for this kind of thinking. We have the critical thinking, which is very popular theory. Then we have these epistemic ideas. What we have here researchers who have been doing that, which is very important. And then maybe something about this evidence-based thinking, but I think it is not under one concept. It has to be kind of searched every area with their own terms, and I haven't done it now lately. Maybe somebody else would know something in this group.
Yes, because I think that the problem is very serious. For example, in the field of education, there's this famous book of Hattie, where he summarized thousands of studies from all parts of the world and came out with one number of different concepts, that this is so effective for students learning, this is not effective for students learning. And then if people take these ideas without understanding anything about the ways how this kind of findings have been created, in which context they are made, they are mechanically applied, I would say that then this kind of evidence-based practice will be very counterproductive, so that for practice. And because of that, I think that before we really try to enhance evidence-based practice, we should be sure that people can make scientific evidence in a meaningful way, to contextualize them, to evaluate them in critically, to understand the constraints of that, and so it's very demanding, absolutely. In some very specific questions, maybe in some medical context, it's a little bit more easier, but the problem is also serious there.
That is very true. Yes.
By the way, it's Andreas, because you have been doing very much meta-analysis during years. And of course, the meta-analysis is the key for evidence-based practice. And when we summarize huge amount of findings and get one effect size, what do you think, how easily we can then use that one effect size in practice?
Yeah, I felt a bit trapped almost by the critique by Hattie. Of course, it's true because we have only one number representing hundreds of studies within different contexts. So I think this is a very valid critique of Hattie's work. At the same time, it's a lovely method.
Sure.
I like it very much, and like with Satu, I think we did a workshop right in Aachen some years ago in the Jure community. So I think it's true what you say, that people need to understand the reasoning behind meta-analysis to understand what the numbers mean actually. I was doing a workshop in March at the Technical University of Munich on meta-analysis, and one question came up about the evidence, where I was asked, is there a priority? Is there a higher level of evidence? Is there lower kinds of evidence produced by surveys or interviews? And isn't meta-analysis producing the highest quality evidence we need in science? And this is an interesting question, isn't it? What is knowledge, how it is produced? And I think, Mari, you had excellent slides in the presentation tapping into those questions, discussing the reasoning and the nature, the epistemic nature behind maybe these terms. And also when I think about the paper you published in the Educational Research Review in 2017, I think, on the return of the behaviorist traditions. This is a similar problem I think we have not only in students, but also in researchers. So I was thinking in terms of of teaching methods, we would need far more courses on scientific thinking, far less courses on different methods, because methods change, they're developed and refined, and new methods come up every time. So I think it's good to focus on developing the thinking skills also in our Jure community, right? So when the next early in Gothenburg is now happening, or in 2 years, and wherever it is, then I think it's good to have more courses that try to teach the thinking skills also of PhD students. And for that, I think, Mari, you would be a perfect teacher, right? I remember that in 2007, when I was an exchange student, an Erasmus student in Turku, I think I learned the idea of a mixed methods approach actually from you, Mari.
Oh, wow.
I remember how confused I was that there's something in between qualitative and quantitative. Is that possible?
Really?
And it was lovely. So thank you very much for that.
Okay. That was the time when I was collaborating with Anthony on Bagbasi, because he studied statistics anxiety in USA, and he was connected to this first book of mixed methods, Tashakkori and Tedley's book, and I think I went to some conference and I saw the book and bought it and brought it to Finland, and maybe it was just the same time when we had interaction. Oh, great! Wow.
Yes, yes, I think that has been very kind of useful discussion, which has started with this term mixed methods. Of course, the term is a bit bit confusing because this is also a very specific term in statistics, the mixed method approach. But of course, the general mixed method means completely different thing than in the specific statistical context. But in general, I think that when statistical methods and even the meta-analysis methods are discussed or taught in university studies, that would be very important to connect also that to the more broader scientific thinking. When we talk about statistical significance, then what kind of assumptions in more general scientific thinking we have? Or when we present effect sizes, what does it mean? Not only as a kind of formula, the mathematical formula, how to present that, but the meaning of that. And unfortunately, this kind of content is very seldom connected to the more formal methodological studies, but should be there. And for example, this question which Jake has been very much thinking recently, the kind of, for example, the pre-registration of studies. This is also related to very deep kind of scientific thinking, that if we get a lot of we have a lot of data, and then we try all kind of analyses, then we randomly find interesting, significant findings. What is the role of these findings, or then findings if we really have created on the basis of theory, clear hypotheses, and then we test exactly these hypotheses we have previously created on the basis of theory. The empirical findings, they look mathematically similar, but they are completely different. The meaning of them is completely different. And this kind of things we cannot understand only on this kind of mechanical statistical level. We need more deeper scientific thinking to understand these ideas. Do you have something to comment, Jake?
No, I was going to say, and most people then also say that, well, pre-registration without really having strong theory it goes back to what Mari was saying, that like, and what you guys have been kind of really going back to over and over again, and really recognizing the role of theory as the foundation, and it's really, especially when we get away from that and then includes bad statistical practices, that we really start to move away from actual sort of proper scientific processes.
Would this be now a good moment for going to or opening the floor to a more general discussion among us about how teachers can support, if we think about teachers in different levels, but especially in university for bachelor's or master's, but also for PhDs and other researchers, like how we can support students' development of scientific thinking, which is, by the way, the question that Mari prepared for our discussion part today.
Also, if somebody has some questions or comments,
yeah,
I would like to hear.
Minna, can you repeat the question?
I can, yeah. So how teachers can support students' development of scientific thinking, and we are not going into any breakout rooms, but I think we can discuss here just among us all. I think there were excellent and important critical aspects presented also already in the discussion, but what do you think based on your own experiences and such?
I could start here. I was teaching today's 9-year-old. So I think that supporting children's natural curiosity, they like to know things, but I think that adults are those who kill that curiosity. But if if we could continue that, create a continuum for that curiosity from those early years to the university, there would not be any problem.
I think that's a very central issue, and I think it comes to the question at the university that students are in a situation in their first research class where they are facing lots of new concepts, and their cognitive capacity is like overflowing, and they don't have time to really learn all the important concepts, and in that kind of a situation they don't feel secure, and they're not kind of brave enough to ask the teacher that, or say that I didn't understand this fully, so they don't ask the stupid questions that they should ask. So there should be small groups where you could really discuss about these terms and try to really understand them. Yes, I agree with you.
I could ask you, Mari, now, like when supervising master's theses, there seems to be oftentimes this phase that they need to pass, and the phase is filled with uncertainty. And I think dealing with uncertainty is something that everyone is struggling with if we are doing research. Like we never know well enough, and it's seems to be a new experience for our students in the teacher department. Like they can get lost because there's no one who can say it definitely, or at least I don't want to say as a supervisor that this is a definite truth how you must do it. So what do you think, what is the role of uncertainty and dealing with uncertainty in the scientific thinking or learning it?
Actually, I think Erno would be better to answer this question. And you have also, Erno, done studies about uncertainty in mathematics learning, but you have been supervising master thesis so long that what do you think? How do you guide your students?
I'd bridge on this because I'd actually wanted to ask about these processes of conceptual change, and I think this idea of tolerance of ambiguity, like, so I'd really be interested if you would also include in your answer something about this question if possible.
Okay, now the microphone is open. Yes, what the term I already started to use quite early on. It was already in 1980s, the tolerance of ambiguity, and that was the idea that if we somehow try to close our mind too early, then we often miss the opportunity to learn, and that's. But if we keep our mind open for the new challenges and controversies and conflicts between our prior thinking and the new demands, this is very demanding, also emotionally, and this is something we should learn. And I think that in generally thinking, the whole scientific process is also kind of managing about these the uncertainties, challenges, attempt to create methods to tolerance also this uncertainty, and the methods we have are tools to do that, and we should understand them in that way, so that they are not methods which in a kind of mechanical way bring on us from the starting point to the end, and then we have findings, but the findings are never final findings. We have to understand that they are always incomplete, and there will be better studies later on which bring our knowledge further. And there, I think that the tolerance of ambiguity is a very nice concept to understand also the scientific process. Of course, it's important to understand learning scientific ideas, and it's I think it's very important in these conceptual change situations where we have to restructure our thinking, because restructuring always means that we have to give up our previous certainty. Maybe with these prior ideas we were very sure about things, and then we noticed that they are our beliefs are in conflict with the reality, and then when we start to restructure our thinking, it means that there will be a very long period when everything is so uncertain, and that's very important in demanding learning, but also in scientific process.
This must be the situation where our bird Erno, yes, is standing on the floor, and both the beak and the tail are in the tar. Nokka ja, yes, nokka ja häntä tervassa. So yeah, exactly. But I think this is super important, and I wish that or in the next seminar that I'm going to have with the master students, we are going to talk about this, and this might be like a very important part of scientific thinking indeed, I think. And I think you described the issues there very nicely, Erno, and so thank you. Any questions to Mari or Erno or Andreas, who is nicely there, or to anyone else in the group? Or are we ready to let Jake to close the seminar?
I think I have a question.
Excellent.
Basically,
nice.
More like a comment. So as being a master student, this is my second year. So I can relate a lot about what Mari has explained and Arno has explained. And I also know this with experience as a science communicator with students, that importance of question. So starting with a question, that is basically the fundamentally first point of research. But now more moving towards this education research for my PhD, I was more wondering about what kind of question we should focus on. Should we focus on more descriptive questions, which is like, is it right or wrong? Or should we focus more on normative questions, which start with basically, should we do, like in good and bad sense? So maybe what I'm asking is this whole idea of design-based research, which is now getting more and more in education field. Mm-hmm. So how you see as someone who is just starting this research field of research in education science, what kind of questions we should be asking? Thank you.
Mari, you can start.
No, I was just thinking about you, Erno.
Okay. Yes, I think this is a very important issue you raised, and it is surprisingly difficult for students to think about the relevant research questions, and of course the questions can be focused in a very different way, and I think it's quite typical that first ideas people have are quite descriptive questions, and but then the process goes on, and then people can gradually elaborate the questions towards more interesting scientific questions, because of course in some cases just the descriptive questions can be also interesting questions, but often this is just a starting point, and then we have to develop questions further to questions which are looking for explanations, connections, relationships, causal effects, and so on. But it is clear that this ability to elaborate questions further requires more and more theoretical thinking and reading, this is also very important to understand, because often the students writing their master thesis, they come with some very practical ideas that they are interested in some topic which they have experience in practice, and then when they present the research questions on the basis of their previous experience, they are of course nicely related to that experience, but they are not really helpful for scientific process or any designing a research. So, and then it requires a lot of reading and theoretical thinking to elaborate them the questions so that they really serve as a basis of high level research later on. And there, this kind of aspects of scientific thinking which Mari described are very important.
Any other questions? This was an excellent question. Thank you, Rohit.
Very nice question, very hard also. And also, of course, always in education sciences, there is no
Sorry,
single...
Mari, we can't
Okay.
hear you. For some reason, the voice disappeared. Yes.
Is it now okay?
Now
Okay.
it's good. Yeah.
Good. I need to shout to my computer if I'm talking in low voice. It doesn't hear me. So it was a very nice question, and also very difficult for us as supervisors that how to. Erno had some very good ideas for this, but I would also say that in educational sciences there is no single truth, and it always depends what you are going to study. What is your what you are interested in, and how should it be studied? So difficult question, and maybe here what Erno said earlier, that the tolerance of insecurity and so is very important, that you just have to go forward and rely yourself and think that that you are doing the good choices, although there are problems on the way.
Are we ready to close up the session now? Jake, do you want me to share the last slide?
Sure, yeah. I guess there's no future sessions to advertise, but hopefully then we'll have.
Yes, there are. There will be more. There will be.
Well,
such
yeah, but
in.
Yes. There's no specific ones to advertise, but we hope that to see you back here in fall for continuing on with the session. And I wanted to thank Mari, especially for. I think it's a really important thing for us as researchers, and especially as teacher educators or people working in that field, to also be thinking about specifically these connections between theory and practice in developing scientific skills. So I think that it's a really kind of meta, if we're going to talk about meta-analyses, but now it's a kind of meta question and a meta topic for us as researchers in the field. So I appreciate that. It's really really valuable for us on many different levels. So thank you for that. And thank you for Erno for, of course, the discussion, and Minna for the organization. So yeah, and thank you all for joining as always.